Stop waiting for everything to line up perfectly before you start. The truth is, perfection is an illusion that keeps most people paralyzed in the same place year after year. People often convince themselves that they'll take action when they have more money, more knowledge, more time, or more confidence. But that day never comes because perfection never arrives. Life doesn't wait for your timing. It rewards your action. When you move, the universe moves with you. Every great success began with a messy, uncertain, imperfect first step that most people are too afraid to take. The desire for perfection disguises itself as preparation, but it's often fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right conditions, but in reality, you're protecting yourself from discomfort. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in motion. The longer you wait to take the first step, the heavier that step becomes. Momentum only begins when you stop analyzing and start moving, no matter how unsure you feel. Perfection is the enemy of progress. You can't improve what doesn't exist, and you can't correct a path you never started walking. When you take action, even if it's clumsy or uncertain, you create opportunities to learn, to adjust, and to get better. Every failure carries a lesson that perfection will never teach. It's through imperfection that you discover what works and what doesn't, and those discoveries are what ultimately build mastery. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not the ones who started perfectly. They're the ones who started imperfectly, but refused to quit. They acted when they were scared. They tried when they weren't sure. They learned by doing, not by waiting. Every day you delay action, you delay the future that could be yours. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled with dreams or plans. It's filled with consistent action, no matter how small it feels. When you decide to start, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to shift from hesitation to movement, from fear to faith. You stop overthinking and start experiencing. You realize that clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. The path unfolds when your feet move. You learn by walking, not by staring at the road. The first step doesn't have to be big. It just has to be taken. That's how momentum is built. Perfectionists often believe that one perfect move will lead to success, but success is never built in one move. It's built through repetition, failure, and course correction. You don't have to see the entire staircase before taking the first step. You only need to trust that the next step will reveal itself once you're in motion. Movement opens doors that stillness keeps shut. You'll never know how far you can go until you stop standing still. Your dream is waiting for action, not approval. Nobody will give you the perfect green light to start. The timing will never feel right, and you'll never feel completely ready. The right time is created by the person who decides to move. The greatest regret you'll ever face won't come from failure. It will come from knowing you never tried. Action gives you the chance to succeed. Inaction guarantees you never will. It's not about how fast you start or how perfectly you execute. It's about your willingness to move when everything in you wants to wait. The strength you seek is built through action, not thought. You may not control every outcome, but you control your decision to act. Every time you move forward, no matter how uncertain you feel, you weaken the grip of fear and strengthen your belief in yourself. Start where you are with what you have. Use what's in your hands right now. You don't need the best tools, the best timing, or the perfect environment. All you need is commitment. The more you act, the more you attract. The world rewards those who dare to begin. Every step forward, no matter how small, puts you in alignment with your purpose. Every moment spent waiting pushes it further away. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need validation to move. The only approval that matters is your own decision to take that first step. The perfect moment you've been waiting for is not in the future. It's the moment you decide to move. Even when everything inside you says, wait, movement is the spark that ignites progress. Most people wait for motivation to appear before they act, but motivation is temporary and unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather, and if you depend on it, you'll spend most of your life stuck. Movement, on the other hand, creates its own energy. When you take that first small step, you awaken momentum. That movement changes your emotional state, your thoughts, and your sense of possibility. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about doing something, because doing something shifts everything. When you move, you begin to break the cycle of hesitation that holds you hostage. Hesitation builds fear while movement builds faith. The moment you act, your brain starts to adapt. It begins to see progress where there was once only doubt. The longer you sit in stillness, the stronger your excuses become. But once you take action, even the smallest one, you start building a new identity. One of someone who moves, who decides, who follows through. That identity is what separates achievers from dreamers. Momentum doesn't come from big leaps. It comes from consistent motion. It's the compound effect of small, deliberate actions that eventually lead to massive results. Every day you move, you reinforce a pattern of persistence. That pattern creates energy, and that energy propels you forward. Even on the days you don't feel like it, you start to rely less on inspiration and more on discipline. Momentum makes movement easier because it reminds you of the progress you've already made, and progress is the greatest motivator of all. When you move, your mind begins to focus. You stop overthinking and start doing. Overthinking kills action because it fills your mind with what ifs and worst case scenarios. But when you're in motion, you don't have time to drown in analysis. You're too busy creating results. You can think your way into fear, but you can only move your way into faith. The moment you start, even if you don't know exactly where you're going, you begin to build clarity through experience. Clarity comes to those who move, not those who wait. Every great accomplishment in history began with motion. The people who changed the world weren't the ones who had the perfect plan. They were the ones who started when others hesitated. They learned, adjusted, failed, and tried again. The same principle applies to your life. You don't have to be the fastest or the smartest. You just have to keep moving when others stop. Momentum doesn't care about perfection. It only cares about persistence. Once you commit to staying in motion, success becomes inevitable. Movement transforms your energy. When you're stagnant, you feel drained, doubtful, and disconnected. But when you move physically, mentally, spiritually, you awaken something powerful inside you. You reconnect with your sense of purpose. You begin to see opportunities that were invisible before. It's like lighting a fire inside your soul that refuses to go out. Each action you take adds another spark, and soon that spark turns into a blaze that fuels your entire journey. You don't need to know how everything will unfold to take the next step. The path reveals itself only to those who are walking it. Standing still won't give you answers. It only multiplies confusion. Movement teaches you what works and what doesn't. It teaches you resilience, adaptability, and focus. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every attempt brings you closer to mastery. The process of moving, failing, and learning is what builds unshakable strength. Momentum is your greatest ally in the pursuit of success. When you have it, challenges feel smaller and goals feel closer. But when you lose it, everything feels harder than it is. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to move a little every day than to move a lot once in a while. Small daily actions compound into big transformations. The key is to never let a day go by without taking at least one step toward your vision. When you act consistently, you begin to trust yourself again. You stop breaking promises to your future. You start believing in your own word, and that belief becomes unstoppable. You no longer wait for external validation or the right circumstances. You create momentum from within. You realize that action is not just what you do, it's who you become. It's the language of self-trust, the rhythm of growth, and the foundation of confidence. Movement turns dreams into reality. It's the missing link between your intentions and your results. Every time you take action, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. That's how ordinary people build extraordinary lives. One step, one decision, one movement at a time. Discipline is the invisible force that separates those who talk about success from those who actually experience it. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting. And most days, it doesn't even feel rewarding in the moment. But discipline is what builds the foundation of greatness. It's waking up when you don't feel like it, doing the work when no one is watching, and following through on your commitments, even when the motivation is gone. Discipline is what carries you when inspiration fades and emotions fluctuate. It's the decision to honor your purpose over your feelings. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen your character. The world is full of talented people who never succeed because they lack consistency. Talent might open the door, but discipline is what keeps it open. You can't build something lasting on the foundation of convenience. You must be willing to do what's necessary even when it's inconvenient. The people who win are not the ones who always feel good about the process. They're the ones who act regardless of how they feel. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's telling yourself that your vision matters enough to sacrifice temporary pleasure. It's refusing to let laziness, distraction, or fear rob you of the future you could have. Every disciplined decision you make becomes a deposit into your destiny. Those deposits compound over time, building results that others mistake for luck. But luck has nothing to do with it. It's the fruit of daily decisions that most people aren't willing to make. When you live with discipline, you start to experience real freedom. At first, discipline feels like restriction. It feels like limitation. But over time, it becomes liberation. It frees you from regret, from inconsistency, from mediocrity. The freedom that comes from discipline is the ability to control your mind and your actions, to live with direction instead of drifting aimlessly. You no longer wait for conditions to be perfect. You create your own momentum through consistent effort. Discipline rewires your mind. It shifts your focus from short-term comfort to long-term reward. It trains your brain to value results over excuses. The more disciplined you become, the less you rely on external factors to motivate you. You begin to find strength in routine, confidence in structure, and purpose in persistence. You no longer chase the feeling of motivation. You cultivate the habit of consistency, and that becomes your superpower. The truth is, discipline requires sacrifice. You have to give up distractions, delay gratification, and sometimes walk alone. But that's the price of growth. The path of discipline is not crowded because it demands more than most are willing to give. Yet, it's the only path that leads to mastery. When you accept that discomfort is part of the process, It stops being something to fear. You start to see discipline not as punishment, but as the bridge between who you are and who you're meant to become. Every act of discipline plants a seed of transformation. You may not see results immediately, but the results are always accumulating. Every day you show up, you're building unseen strength. Every time you resist the urge to quit, you're developing resilience. Discipline doesn't just build habits, it builds identity. You stop saying, I'm trying, and start saying, I'm becoming. You begin to trust yourself because you've proven that you can follow through even when it's hard. Without discipline, potential is wasted. You can have all the vision in the world, but without consistent action, it remains a fantasy. Discipline turns dreams into progress and potential into power. It's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent. You will stumble, you will make mistakes, but discipline teaches you to get back up and continue. That's how strength is forged, through repetition and resilience. The most successful people are not controlled by emotion. They are guided by principle. They've learned to do what's required, whether they feel like it or not. They understand that emotions are temporary, but results are permanent. Discipline teaches you emotional mastery. It reminds you that you are not your feelings, and you don't have to obey them. You act because of your goals, not because of your mood. That level of control is what builds unstoppable momentum. Discipline transforms effort into excellence. It's the daily decision to align your actions with your purpose, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. The disciplined person understands that greatness is built in the small, consistent choices that no one sees. It's in waking up early, staying focused, putting in the work, and refusing to quit when progress feels slow. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about persistence. And persistence is what shapes everything you're destined to become. Courage always comes before confidence. Most people wait to feel confident before they move, not realizing that confidence is built through movement. You can't think your way into certainty. You must act your way into it. The first step is always the hardest because it requires faith without evidence. It's stepping into the unknown with nothing but belief in your potential. Confidence doesn't magically appear. It's earned through consistent acts of courage that prove to yourself that you can handle whatever comes your way. When you act with courage, even in fear, something begins to shift inside you. You start to see that fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you're growing. Fear only has power when you run from it. The moment you face it, it begins to shrink. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. Every time you act in the presence of fear, you reclaim a piece of your power. That power builds self-trust, and that self-trust becomes confidence. Confidence doesn't come from external approval or validation. It comes from doing the hard things that others avoid. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. When you show up, follow through, and push past resistance, you're building inner strength. That strength becomes the foundation of confidence because you no longer depend on outside affirmation. You've proven your own capability through experience. The more you act, the more you believe in your ability to act again. People often believe that confident individuals are fearless, but in reality, they've just built a habit of acting in fear. They've trained themselves to move before they feel ready, to speak before they feel certain, to try before they have proof. Confidence is simply the memory of past courage. It's the record of all the times you showed up when you were scared and discovered that you were stronger than you thought. You don't become confident by avoiding fear. you become confident by walking straight through it. When you step out in courage, you begin to reshape your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates and start seeing yourself as someone who takes action. Every courageous act rewires your mind and reinforces a new story about who you are. You begin to realize that bravery isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. What once terrified you eventually becomes familiar, and what once felt impossible becomes effortless. Courage is contagious within your own life. The moment you take one bold step, it inspires another. You start to take bigger risks, dream larger dreams, and break through limitations that once controlled you. Courage expands your comfort zone little by little until you realize that there is no limit. Only what you've been willing to attempt. Each time you act, you increase your capacity to handle uncertainty, and with that capacity comes unshakable confidence. You can't wait for confidence to knock on your door because it never will. Confidence comes through movement, not waiting. If you only act when you feel ready, you'll spend your entire life standing still. The truth is readiness is a myth. Everyone who's ever achieved something remarkable started before they felt ready. They didn't wait for perfect timing or complete assurance. They moved, and clarity came with the movement. Confidence is built in the doing, not the dreaming. Courage requires you to silence the voice of doubt that says you're not enough. That voice will always whisper reasons to delay, excuses to wait, and fears about failing. But when you act anyway, you teach your mind a new truth, that you are capable of more than you imagined. Each time you prove that voice wrong, it grows quieter. The louder voice becomes the one that says, I've done hard things before, I can do them again. That's how courage turns into confidence, through repetition and self-belief. The connection between courage and confidence is simple yet powerful. You must first take the leap before you learn to fly. You don't wait to feel brave. You decide to be brave, and the feeling follows. Every confident person you admire once stood in the same uncertainty you feel. The only difference is that they moved anyway. They allowed courage to carry them through doubt until confidence became their natural state. Confidence is not the starting point. It's the reward. It's what you earn after showing up day after day in faith, not fear. You act, you fail, you learn, and through that process, you grow stronger. Every act of courage plants a seed of confidence that blooms with consistency. You stop needing the world to reassure you because you've built proof within yourself. Courage is the root, confidence is the fruit, and both are born through action.